Good evening. Sprocket Simulations here. Just wanted to do a quick tutorial on how to use the Beechcraft Model 18 Autopilot. It is a simple system, but unique, and there's also a bug with it, which is the reason why we're kind of flying at dusk right now, so I can demonstrate how I work around it, because it has to do with these very cool landing lights that retract and extend out of the wings. Now, I know that sounds crazy, but for whatever reason, the landing lights, which is right here, let's go ahead and actually turn on our red light as well. Boom. So our landing lights are currently extended and on. When those are extended and on, it will not let you engage autopilot. Nothing will happen. You can turn them back on after you've engaged it, but sometimes it's hit or miss whether or not it's actually going to respond correctly. So what I do is I have it on for takeoff and landing, and then off for the rest of the flight. It's simple enough, but it's just something to be aware of if you're getting extremely frustrated with why is my autopilot not working. It's going to be because your landing lights are on. So we're going to do basically a little loop here out of Santa Barbara. We'll go ahead and come on down to our GPS. The quickest way I found to enter in waypoints instead of doing like rolling the knob to K, then S, then B, then A, is that if you come over to your nearest, it'll bring up your airport, and then where you can go ahead and hit enter, and we have it pulled up here. Go ahead and come back to flight plan. Go ahead and rotate once. There it is. Do it again. Enter. Yes. There we go. Really, we're just doing from Santa Barbara to Santa Barbara. If we close that and come over to our map, you can see that there actually isn't a flight plan in there. Let's clear out some of these things here. But what we're going to do is we're actually going to do an RNAv, which I think is pretty cool that this aircraft is capable of flying an RNAv. Makes you really able to fly into any airport that has, you know, the latest and greatest in approaches. You can obviously do ILS and localizer and all the rest of it, but the ability to do an RNAv I think is pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead and select our approach. We don't want the ILS. We want to come down and select RNAv 7. Now as far as our transition, we don't want to come all the way up here because we're going to kind of loop around this way. So we're going to come on down to select Lober. And Lober is really just coming from the south up to the north, then turning in. So we're just going to load it. Don't activate it, just load it. You're going to get a beep and a message saying, hey, your approach is not active. That is okay, because we're going to mess around with the heading bug and the pitch and all that sort of stuff. Speaking of which, we'll go ahead and head on over to our main autopilot panel, which is this guy. You have your roll button, which is really your on and off, your master on and off for autopilot. Think of this just like any other on and off, where it's just going to hold you sort of, you know, level and steady. Then you have your heading, which is a little confusing. Think of this more of like your active selection. It doesn't correspond too well with the bug that's going on. I think that's these two things for some reason are interacting with each other and causing a problem. But essentially you need this on in order to fly if you have your heading mode selected, or if you have your nav mode selected, or if you're doing a approach that needs to be on. Like I said, it's going to be a little inconsistent with the way we're going to be doing this, so it might tick on and off, but the actual functionality will stay the same. Alt or altitude hold is going to be simply that. You're going to be able to hold your current altitude. There's no way to set to level off at a specific altitude, so you do have to keep an eye on what altitude you are climbing to and click this accordingly when you want to level off. pitch, think just like vertical speed. In the real world, this would actually work off of a true pitch of, you know, degrees of nose up or nose down. For the simulator, it literally ties it into vertical speed, so you can click that on, rotate this for you know, your nose up or nose down, and then you're going to be able to set it by watching the needle on your vertical speed indicator. Coming over to the mode selector side, can't see it too great from here right now, but in the middle is heading mode. One over from that is your OBS, which we won't go over, it's rarely used, and then you have your nav mode all the way over to the left. Turning the knob to the right, you are going to have your I believe it's listed as your localizer normal and then your localizer reverse. Just think of this as approach and back course. So we're going to leave it in the middle on heading mode because that's what we're going to be selecting first. We've already gotten everything fired up and we are set to take off. I didn't want to take too much time going through startup procedures, as I just wanted to get into how this autopilot works. Now, taking off in tail draggers is always a little bit of a challenge, especially this one. It's big, it's heavy, that big old tail picks up and you start to wiggle around, so you definitely want to get ready to, as they say, dance on the rudder pedals. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and turn off our parking brake. Where's our parking brake? Parking brake is there. And then we can go ahead and advance our throttle. I'll do my very best to have a nice smooth takeoff here, but like I said, it is not always, does not always go to plan when that tail comes up. There it goes. I'm going to go ahead and drop down my view. And we can go ahead and rotate. Not too bad. We started to go a little bit off to the right there, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and bring our gear up. And that was me just using my panel switch to do that. And so we've got a nice little climb coming out right now. Now, if I was to go ahead and turn on the autopilot, nothing happens. I'm still just flying as normal. We'll turn that back off. We're going to come down and turn our landing lights off, and that automatically turned on the autopilot. It flipped that directly up. Now we are actually in our roll mode. What we want to do now is, if we actually go over and we select our pitch, we can then set this by looking at our vertical speed. We can go through and set it to what we want it to be at. So I'm just going to aim for around, you know, a little bit above 1,000. So here we are, we're straight and level, and we've got a climb going on. In this aircraft, you do need to back off on the RPMs a little bit for a normal climb, and also back off on your throttle to bring it back down to around 33 inches of manifold pressure. So we're coming up to about 2,300 feet here. So all you'd want to do is go ahead and hit your altitude hold button, and then that is going to hold us in place. Now, if we want to, we can go ahead and set our heading dial.
Romeo Kilo Tango, leaving my airspace frequency change approved.
And that's them just saying, hey, we're leaving.
Santa Barbra Tower,
acknowledge
November,
them.
Sierra Papa
So the heading
Romeo
bug's a little
Kilo
hard to
Tango
see at
frequency
night,
change.
but you can see it turning around there. So now that we've got that set, we can go ahead and turn on heading, and you'll notice we will start turning over. So you can see I do not have the landing lights on now, and the autopilot is working as it should be. Such a cool plane. Okay, we'll hop back into the cockpit here. So if we zoom out and we look at our flight plan, you can see we're flying out here, and we want to, actually I want to go direct to Aceva. So if we come on down to our flight plan, I'll get us a little bit better view here. We'll come back here to show you what I was talking about. So we're flying out this way, but I don't want to fly to Lober, then here and do that. I just want to go direct to Aceva. So all we have to do is come on down to our flight plan, click your center knob, and then you can come on down and go to Aceva, click direct to, and then we're going to click activate. Now nothing's going to happen for two reasons. Well, actually I've already got one set. Typically you'd have this is the default, but we'll go ahead and click activate, and you can see nothing is happening on the outside. We're still flying basically our heading mode. So you want to make sure that that is switched over to GPS, and then remember this knob all the way over to the left is actually our nav mode. So I've gone ahead and selected that, and now we are making our turn to go direct to Aceva. And while we're in cruise, we can go ahead and close our cowl flaps as well. So just shut those, get a little bit more. Actually, I don't think we've fully set cruise mode yet. We're probably going pretty quick. We are. So cruise mode in this, you want to come down to about 2,000 RPMs. And then around sort of, 26 to 28 inches of manifold pressure. Now something else you can do, you can see that we're actually trying to catch back up to this line. If you just go back to your direct to button and hit activate again, it's actually going to draw a fresh straight line, so you don't have to like do that sort of like arcing in. You're literally going direct from your position. It's just going to take us just a little bit to fly on over to Aceva. Now what's going to happen though is we need to be at NAPS at 1,800 feet. The way the GPS works as well is that it's going to cut this turn because it is a very sharp angle. Typically you wouldn't be coming in to an approach like this, but so we're going to go ahead and adjust our altitude now to come down to 1,800. So same again, all you need to do is hit your pitch button, and then you're now going to roll it up to start your descent. There we go, we're starting to come down. I'm just going to keep an eye on this, and once we get to 1,800, go ahead and click the altitude mode. Notice it did not change anything as far as our nav setting. Once we make this turn, and this segment here, this leg from Aceva to NAPS will turn purple somewhere about mid-turn. This is basically our approach, or really you're getting onto the localizer. Gotta watch my altitude here real quick. Yep, thought we'd be getting close, so just gonna go ahead and alt mode. Let's go ahead and head back. So as you come, just gonna make this sort of turn. This is gonna turn purple. That's when I want to go ahead and take this knob and turn it over to the localizer. And that's your approach mode. That means that we'll capture that glide slope, and it will stay on course to come into Santa Barbara. So we're at the correct altitude for NAPS. We're joining in between Aceva and NAPS because we're going to make that turn before we hit there. And then once I've switched over and I've got the approach loaded, you can actually go ahead and turn your landing lights back on, and it will not turn off your autopilot. It will stay and fly, and so that way you can have your lights on when you touch down. The one thing that I will recommend, though, is that you have a key bind for turning your autopilot on and off. That is because it won't disengage properly by clicking. So you really need to hit a button when you're on your final, you know, when you're hitting your minimums. You want a button to actually turn it off instead of actually toggling here, because you toggle here because the landing lights are on, it's not going to interact. It's annoying. It's a bug. I hope they fix it. I haven't seen any acknowledgement of it, just more of a you know, bug reports on the forums about it. So either use your keyboard, or if you're playing on Xbox, then I believe it's the Y button. I think the default on the keyboard is Z, maybe, but double check what your key binding is and set it there. I actually have a button on my multi-panel to actually turn it off, and that'll help when I'm coming into my approach, instead of having to come over here and really you'd have to flick your lights off really quick, click it, and then flick your lights back on is what you'd have to do. So you're going to see we're going to start making our turn here in a moment. And like I said, as soon as that turns purple, I want to go ahead and turn this knob over to localizer. What other views I got saved up here? Oh, you know what we should do? Let's get this dome light on here. Where's the dome light? Dome light. There we go. There we go. Now we can see in the back there. I do like this plane. I think it's a great model. Carenado and Asobo did a fantastic job with the modeling. People will complain about the flight model, but that is just because for some reason. So there we go. It just turned over to the purple, and so now we can go ahead and turn this over to approach, or as it's listed on their localizer, normal. And we're going to make our turn. It'll take us a little bit beyond it, and then we'll come and loop back in. But we are now on the approach. Dial down to the dials up here. There we go. Turn all these to high real quick, and then back some of them off. A little bright down there. There we go. Didn't seem to do too much. Better. Okay, so we're lining up here. You can see we've got Santa Barbara in the distance there. I'm going to go ahead and start to slow us down just a smidge to where I can get the landing gear down as we sort of, just before naps, I'll drop the landing gear. Now, this aircraft also has, you know, typically in RNAv, you don't have your sort of yellow arrows on your CDI showing you the glide path. It just sort of captures it. This plane does have a nice illuminated button here to actually let you know when you've captured the glide path. Bring the throttle back in a little bit. So to configure for landing here, you do go full forward on the props and full forward on mixture. We didn't really adjust mixture because we didn't go over 3,000 feet. So now that we're pretty much set to go, I'm going to go ahead and actually turn those landing lights on. So that way we'll have it for when we're landing. I'm also going to come up into my sort of landing view here. And so from here on out, I don't need to really hit any of these buttons because I'm just going to be using my disengage button for once we are at our minimums, and we're going to fly it in manually. Here we are coming up to naps. I'm going to go ahead and lower the landing gear. Here we are. I don't know where the light, I believe, is there for the landing gear. So we should see in a minute that we captured the glide slope. Come back up to our main view here. We'll wait for that to illuminate. There it goes. And so now we can start to slow down a little bit and introduce our first notch of flaps. So we're captured on the glide slope. Everything is coordinated. We do have our landing lights on, so it is possible to still use the autopilot with the lights on. You just need to sort of switch them on and off for takeoff and landing, which kind of makes sense, but really you should be able to have your landing lights on when you want. I'm going to go ahead and go to second notch of flaps, and I'm going to increase the power here. I like to have it right around 18.5, 19 inches of manifold pressure here. Now, landing a tail dragger is equally as challenging, if not harder, than taking one off. For a wheeled landing, you kind of just float above the runway. You kind of want to just stay just with it, and you'll have back pressure on the yoke, but you don't want to continue that back pressure because you're going to slam the tail down, bounce, and start this sort of like wave motion of bouncing, taking off, bouncing, taking off until your speed comes down. The wings are going to tip. Everything's going to go a little haywire. Go ahead and go third notch of flaps. So what I like to do is just right before I touch down, I let my yoke go to neutral, and it pretty much eliminates any of the bouncing. I might get a small bounce, but none of this sort of like bouncing, you know, a good 5-6 feet in the air. You're just going to have like a little skip. So the other tricky thing after that is trying to obviously stay lined up on the center line, which can be difficult. For the same reasons, a tail dragger, big old plane wings, the wind affects it. Too much rudder at high speeds will lift the wing. So you really have to be accurate, gentle, smooth in order to have a good landing, and it's easy to get kind of carried away with that. So our minimums for Santa Barbara, I believe, are right around 450. Actually, I think it's less than that. But we'll go ahead and disengage the autopilot here. So autopilot is off. You can see that all the buttons came off and my glide path button came off, but my landing lights stayed on because I had that switch be my my toggle switch. The key mapping makes it go off instead of hitting that button, which would have done nothing otherwise. Okay, let's see how well we can get this done. So like I said, you just want to kind of keep that backwards pressure on. Try and bleed off as much speed as possible, and then come to neutral. And like I said, there's a little hop there, but it wasn't horrible. Tail is down. Trying to stay on that center line. Pull back on the elevator and start to apply brakes. There we are. So like I said, a little skip, but not crazy there. We'll go ahead and come to the outside view. Stayed pretty close on the center line, but could have done a little better. go ahead and come off on this taxiway here. Raise our flaps up. But there you have it. That is a quick tutorial on using the autopilot with the current bugs. It does still work. You can still do your flights. You can plan them. This would be no difference if you were doing an ILS, if you had a complex flight plan in with multiple waypoints. It would still work the same. I just recommend only having your lights on for takeoff. Turn them off before you switch on the autopilot. Once you're on your approach, you can go ahead and switch them back on, but have a key binding to turn off your autopilot before touchdown. And then you should be fine. And like I said, hopefully they are going to get this taken care of and everything's going to be fixed with the next sim update. But for right now, I think this is a pretty decent workaround in order to still land at night and be able to see what you're doing, taxi and everything else. So with that, I hope you enjoyed. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. I'll be doing more. This is going to be the first video for the channel. We'll definitely be having lots of first looks, reviews, tutorials on how to use all sorts of different sort of avionic equipment, how to, just fly certain aircraft. We'll get into maybe some bush flying, some small jets, and using the FMCs, FMSs. But I'm getting ahead of myself. For starters, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, comment down below if you found this useful, or if you have any tips on what you found using this autopilot. Thanks again. Have a good evening.